What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Welcome to the Tuesday show, gang. Looks like there's a crowd here already hanging out. Cujo's here, Travis, Dennis, Stephen Leibowitz. Gang's all here. Looks like there's a handful more out there who haven't said hi yet, but hello to everybody who's here. Quiet little Tuesday. Fairly quiet weekend. First weekend with no football action. Didn't watch a moment of anything. Pro Bowl was this weekend, huh? I didn't watch any of that. Skills contests. Now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't even catch any highlights from it. Was here for basketball all day yesterday. Here for basketball on Saturday. Reasonably successful. I just threw in 20 yesterday. Had one that finished in the top 100 by the end, but it was chasing the top. Little short on a couple of other plays. Feels like one that maybe if I had 150 in there, we would have had a couple other chasers, and who knows what happens, but just had the one real good one. But not a bad little Sunday. Relaxing. Or Monday. That was yesterday. Monday. I'm one day short. That's right. I forgot. That was the Monday slate that I'm talking about. Didn't do a show yesterday. You didn't miss anything if you weren't here yesterday. Had lunch with mom. Went a little long. Decided to just focus on getting projections done and everything. Dennis dropping a George Carlin quote into the chat. People always tell me, have a nice day. Well, what if I don't want to? What if I want to have a crappy day? Good old George. Do not listen to, do not click on, do not retweet that ridiculous, phony, turned out to be phony AI version of a Carlin stand-up thing. I actually did click on it the day it came out just to see how bad it was, knowing that it was going to be god-awful and not represent anything that sounded anything remotely like George Carlin. And it didn't. It was terrible. Even the voice wasn't good, which is like, that's basic shit for these AIs to get right at this point, is doing those, mocking those voices. So it was just weird. It was bad. But then Kelly Carlin, his daughter, sued. And then these guys already have admitted that no, it wasn't even AI written, that they wrote it. So they're just that unfunny that they wrote this terrible thing trying to be George. It's just, what a mess. But just, don't give that any attention. Beyond what I just said, take my word for it. Not worth your time. If you want to check out actual George Carlin, there are plenty of amazing stand-up specials. Anyway, saw him live a couple times back in the day. 4 times, I want to say. Saw his last HBO special at the Beacon. What was that one? You Were All Diseased, I think. Toward the end, he was a little bit, I'm just an old man ranting. Still funny, but wasn't, he had lost a little bit of his fastball. But through, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, he was the best of the best. And as Steven's saying, a lot of his material stands up. Yeah, some of the topical stuff, people might not get, but that doesn't really matter because the overall points are all still shit that we're still arguing about and fighting about as a society. But the specific jokes, like back in one of his early 90s HBO specials, he says, does anybody find it weird that George Bush had an operation on his asshole and Dan Quayle had an operation on his middle finger? Something like that. Stuff like that might fall a little flat these days if you're rewatching. But all of the topical stuff, all the stuff about, both the older Carlin, where it's like the thing that I reference with taking your stuff with you, right? You got a place for your stuff. He was a more innocent guy, and like Al Sleet, the hippy-dippy weatherman, and, bits like that. And then he became more politically charged and had a lot to say through his later years and into the 90s. But yeah, it's a wide variety. How to fix the deficit. I liked his plan for the prison system. Taking the square states and fencing them off. And then once every 6 months, a 6-inch wide gap opens. And boy, are you going to see some maniacs trying to get over the drug prison. Just so good. They always tell me the country's going down the tubes. I say, what tubes? Anyway, welcome to the George Carlin talk. Remember the George Carlin sitcom? It was short-lived, but it was actually pretty decent, as sitcoms go. Anyway, interesting slates today. Bless us, O Lord. Amen. top of the board on both sites. We are getting a massive amount of Amen Thompson on both. 4,100 on the DraftKings slate, 5,600 on FanDuel, landing in 83% of the winners on the FanDuel slate, 92.6% of our top 150. That is pretty aggressively high. 99% of our top 150 at that rock bottom DraftKings price. Yeah, 56.41. He's projected to be the highest overall owned player on both sites. He's been rolling in this situation. They're going to be without Freddie VV tonight. Plenty for him to do. He's at and around and has been at like a 1.2 in this kind of situation. So there's a lot of upside and a lot of faith right now baked into Amen Thompson. He's delivered, but I mean, it is a very high number. It's a pretty high bar. 6.68 points per dollar on FanDuel, 8.96 points per dollar, one of the highest numbers we've seen on the DraftKings slate. Just monstrous numbers. A lot of the time, even when we get guys stepping into these kind of roles for like $4,100 price, it's all right, he's going to step in, but he's going to take a bite and he's not going to be at high use and so on and so forth, and we'll cut down the projection. He's stepping into a great situation right now. So, you know, as much as it might not feel great, I do think it is a solid play up at the top of the board. 84.12% winner on the DraftKings sim, 99% of those top 150 lineups. So pretty much a lock and load option right now. Things might change if you get emergent values around some cheaper guys at the guard spots. Maybe things change up a little bit. But right now, value du jour with a bullet. Royce O'Neal, I wasn't expecting to see that one. This is the first time I'm looking through the sim results. I just ran them. It took a little bit to get my my dashboard here that you guys look at. I've had the projections up since early today. But the dashboard, for some reason, was giving me headaches. So if we might run into some sorting slowdowns, by the way. But first time I'm looking through this, wasn't necessarily expecting to see Royce that high up, but he's only 4,400 at both forward spots on FanDuel, so it makes sense that he's delivering some value. Just kind of a dearth of crazy good value plays. If you look down those prices, I just checked that, the price column on both sites, really. There's only a few guys that are trending in these high returns right now anyway that are from the lower end. Royce is one on FanDuel. Looks like Jonathan Isaac a few blocks down at 44, but only in a 19-minute spot. A little bit of value there, and that's kind of indicative, even with just 19 minutes and 21 fantasy points projected, given the pricing, he's landing in some. So that's just how tight it is on FanDuel today. Dylan Brooks a little further down there, line 17 at 4,900 is delivering some, but that's already approaching more mid-range than value. Aaron Holiday down in line 27, another piece from Houston that should see some minutes at 4,000, giving us a little bit, but there's a little bit less upside for him. So very tight value-wise, and that's why we're seeing some of these guys kind of spring to the top. DSJ coming off a big game the other night, 6.11 points per dollar at 5,100 on FanDuel looks pretty good. Cam Thomas should get another start from Cam Thomas. Strong score, scoring dependent option, but has put up some pretty strong games and has that excellent scoring upside, real life point scoring. So at 74, he's hitting the board pretty hard on FanDuel. 73, same story on DraftKings. A couple pieces from the Knicks. They're showing a little bit stronger on the FanDuel side than they are on DraftKings. But it's a tight slate. Looks like 4 of the Knicks starting 5 are in the top 10, which is always compelling. We're sorted right now by FanDuel value, by the way. And I did that because we are dealing with 2 different slates tonight. 7 games on FanDuel. FanDuel included the 10 o'clock game tonight, Milwaukee-Phoenix. A lot of star firepower in that game, so I get why FanDuel included it. Kind of surprised DraftKings let it off. They're just going through the 9 o'clock game. But considering that game's got, the Milwaukee stars, the Phoenix, like the 3 big stars from Phoenix. It's got Giannis, the highest end, second most high end player behind Luka, maybe ahead of Luka, depending on how you want to rank them. But for fantasy purposes, that's a hefty game to leave off that slate. So I kind of like the way that FanDuel set it up a little bit better. But just for sorting purposes, for our purposes here, we're sorted currently by FanDuel win rates. As always, DraftKings over on this side. But if I did it by DK, we'd have a bunch of blanks where that FanDuel game is. Let's talk a little bit first about injuries, absences, and so on and so forth, now that we did kind of an intro. Cam Johnson, so from the Nets, Cam Johnson, DFS, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Lonnie Walker are all out. Lonnie Walker put up a clunker. He came out in the first quarter yesterday, ended up with like a 4-point game. That was in a couple of my lineups, and I know he was in a couple other people's, which sucked. I think Trey got victimized by that one. But yeah, those three guys being out creates plenty of opportunities for the guys from the Nets that we're already seeing on the board. Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson will both play. That was the news that came out so far during the day. Probables: Kyrie, Maxi Kleber, Tyler Hero, Torrey Craig, Dalen Terry, Kobe White, Giannis, Andre Jackson Jr. Questionables: Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Smith, Luka, Santi Aldama, John Conchar, Derrick Rose, Vince Williams, Duncan Robinson, we got Alex Caruso, Davis Bertans, Ousmane Dieng, Misic, however you say his first name, Vasily. I'm just going to go with Vasily because I think that's probably actually how you pronounce it. Vasily Micic, Kaysen Wallace, Lindy Waters, Jalen Williams, both of them. Damian Lillard, Brook Lopez, all questionable. Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, Derek Lively, Dante Exum, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain, Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart, Xavier Tillman, Zaire Williams, OG Anunoby, Quentin Grimes, Julius Randle, Mitch Robinson, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, and Isaiah Joe all out, as well as Cam Johnson, DFS, and Lonnie Walker. That is your rundown on your injuries. So we do have some key pieces that we're waiting on. Obviously, some pieces from Memphis. We saw that ridiculous game the other night where they had like 8 healthy bodies. That said, we also saw the Knicks run an 8-man the other day with one of those 8 getting like 3 minutes. So we've got some potentially very tight rotations again. I projected the Knicks, all their key guys, kind of along the lines of how Tibbs has been running it, but I'm hoping they're telling Tibbs, like, you got to loosen this up a little bit. As a Knicks fan, I'm hoping this. As a DFS player, I'm happy with the concentration of minutes on the starting 5 and then, a couple other guys. But as a Knicks fan, I'm hoping they open it up a little bit. So I just have a couple scrap minutes going to Malachi Flynn again. He's the one who played 3 minutes the other night. I've got Ryan Arcidiacono and Taj Gibson getting a couple of minutes apiece, but nothing of any kind of significance. And then for the 4 guys basically that are projected at the top of the board there in the top 10 in FanDuel results are all getting 38, 39 minutes. So it's just bonkers what's going on with New York. But given some absences, we could have some tight rotations today. Create some opportunities. That said, the Dames, the Brolos, the Giannis's of the world all probably going to play. Can't imagine those 3 guys, unless somebody's really, really hurt, missing that game against Phoenix. Let's get Pinnacle up. Anything significant change? That doesn't look like. So Houston, Indy favored by 8 at home, 244.5 on the board. Already discussed, we've got one of the key value pieces of on both sites coming out of that game. A lot of pace in that game. Highest total on the slate in that game. So all eyes on that Houston Indy game early, and a lot of other pieces in addition to Amen Thompson from that game hitting the board pretty well. Mavs and the Nets. Mavs favored by 4 on the road in Brooklyn. Kyrie Irving playing in Brooklyn on the anniversary of being traded to Dallas, apparently. I'm not one to chase revenge narratives. I'm not one to chase storylines like that. But as I've always said over the years when those things come up, the only place that I think it is somewhat viable is in basketball. And really in basketball, the only place I really like to do it is with an aggressive, offensively minded, arguably selfish sometimes when he wants to be, point guard who's got the ball in his hands, or guard, primary ball handler who's got the ball in his hands all the time. Kyrie fits basically all of those boxes. He ticks all of those. So maybe a little bit of attention on Kyrie in this spot, just, for the narrative of it. Not one to chase. We'll see where he came up in the numbers, projected out, in like a solid looking Kyrie spot. But yeah, if I'm going to peg a narrative like all season long, that might be my narrative thread to pull a little bit. Grizzlies and the Knicks. So both of those teams, potentially, again, like I was just saying, potentially very, very shorthanded in the Garden. Knicks favored by 14.5, but a very low total, 212.5 on the board in that one. The next game, Orlando, Miami, another very low total, 213.5 in that. Miami favored by 3 in Miami, Battle of Florida there. Minnesota, Chicago, 5.5 point spread. Minnesota favored going into Chicago. Only 217 on the board in that one. So out of our 7 games, we've got 3 kind of clunkers. I mean, there's obviously good plays, good options from any one of those teams, especially at the higher levels or if somebody's just priced nicely. And we'll see where those plays fall. Obviously, like I said, a ton of the Knicks are hitting the board. Some of the Grizzlies will hit the board depending on where the plays are, where the value is. But those are 3 pretty low totals for 2024. Oklahoma City, Utah. OKC favored by 3 in Utah. Back up to 239 points in that one. And then rounding out the slate on FanDuel, the late game, Phoenix favored by 4 at home, 243 points. So we've got a 244.5 to open the slate, and on FanDuel, we've got a 243 to close it. On DraftKings, we've got a 239 to close, and we obviously have that game on both sites. So pretty solid looking slate. Some straight up winners and loser type spots in terms of like what the game environments look like if you're just going by that. But within those, as I was referring to, like obviously all those Knicks, I see Santi Aldama is right there in line 12. Pieces and parts from Brooklyn, from Utah, OKC. So there's a lot of places to go on this one. David Roddy's on the board there in line 19. Jericho Sims got rolled out too. Fucking hell. All right, that's interesting. So yeah, Jericho Sims now out. Ben Mathurin now questionable. Those are the 2 pieces of news there. All right, so that's another 16 minutes dropping into the pool for the Knicks. And it's gotta be Taj. I gotta think that Taj is gonna pick at least a chunk of that up. I'll probably move Taj from 2 to like 10, 12. Maybe I can give Archie instead of like 3, I can give him like 5. It's just going to be scrap minutes though. But yeah, Sims, that's probably, I got to go 12 on Taj then. It's not going to be Fournier. Might just be like a scrap minute or 2 toward like Charlie Brown at this point. I think he's still with the team. I don't know that that's going to create a situation where you're going to want Taj Gibson by any means. But he is the other available large-bodied individual on this team. Yeah, everybody else available is like 6'6" or smaller. Jacob Toppin, I don't know if he's with the team or not. I think he's still in the G League. Yeah, it's probably just going to be another crazy tight rotation. But Sims is a weird piece to lose from what Tibbs was doing because he is big. And he did play, he has been getting like 14, 15 minutes. So that's a somewhat significant piece to take out of the mix for a team that was already running essentially 7 guys. Wacky. I think most of it just goes to Taj. And then they just go a little like flexy positionless, like hard at the 4, next to Precious. It could limit, he might stagger it a little differently between Precious and Hartenstein, but there should be plenty of minutes for everybody. Just got to figure out where that little pocket of minutes goes. But wacky little curveball to start the slate. I was not prepared for Jericho not to go. I can't imagine Taj getting to value. He's the dead min on both sites. But like if I give him 12 minutes, we're talking about like 6 or 7 fantasy points. And I don't see a path for like 20 plus minutes for Taj. So I really don't think that one hits the board. Keep an eye on it in the official update later on after the show. But I can't imagine that that's going to make a Taj night. Hartenstein Moon game. Yeah, that could definitely happen. Beantown likes the Precious side of that one. Both those guys. I have no issues with either of them. I like the way they've both been playing. That said, the way it was, Precious is firmly on the board there already. And Hartenstein not, because FanDuel's had him pretty fairly priced, and we're sorted by FanDuel. Yeah, so this will go up a little. This will probably get into the double digits. He was 15% win rate on DraftKings, 21% of our top 150, 8.3% win rate on FanDuel, 9.3% of our top 50. DK still has him at 64, center only, where FanDuel has him at 78, power forward center. Just a little bit of scoring difference on FanDuel. He's 1.01 versus 0.97 over there. Just the way what he does hits the scoreboard. But definitely a very strong option that's just going to get stronger given the no sims and the potential for 38 big man minutes. And then, Precious, I already had getting a ton of minutes. He's not going to get any additional minutes, but he already looked great. 34.3% win rate, 37% of our top 150 on FanDuel, 27.6% win rate, 36% of our top 150 on DraftKings. Devo looks great. Hart and Brunson both look great. Monster minutes for all these guys. Pin can wave 8 game. Steven Leibowitz likes Jalen Green a whole bunch. Also a good spot. He's right there in the line 14, right under his teammate Alperen Şengün. Both of those look pretty good. Yeah, let's get into some of the positionless. The position by position. Beantown yeah, that's also a good point, Steven Leibowitz. It's not like the Knicks have to play overly big versus this version of Memphis. Just going to be a small game in general. And Tibbs has no issues, running small with these guys. So, yeah, fair point there. But I do still think just, given everybody's love for Taj in this situation, it's probably 8, 10, 12 minutes of that go to Taj. Playing all 4 on FanDuel and option. That's a very good question. I think I ran it with 3 because of the slate size. So in the setup that I ran, which was 3, and I'll rerun it right now because it is a valid question at this point. We're getting mostly 2s, few 3s. About even distribution of both. 2 Nick lineups and 3 Nick lineups. Same thing on DK. Let me just I'll rerun it quick in the background here. They're showing a little bit more on FanDuel, right? Yeah, a little bit on FanDuel. I'm going to rerun it on FanDuel and just see how often 4 hits the board. If it hits it at a very high clip on FanDuel, then I'll rerun it also for DK just to see. If it doesn't on FanDuel, then it probably won't on the DraftKings slate. But that one's also smaller. Default. Yeah, we're good there. I was playing with lowering the randomness on my sims over at AceMind, just to try and create a little bit of additional differentiation. When we get a lot of results that's ROI numbers, we always have a lot of differentiation. But we get a lot of tight packing on the average win numbers, and then on the win rates. It's having a bunch of lineups returning the same basic decimal, 0.1, 0.11, 0.9. There's a little difference there. So I'm trying to find a sweet spot for what's truly representative, what's going to be able to provide a little bit better of a filter on lineups when you're grabbing entries. Just tweaking things, playing with the process with the Sims, seeing how it all comes together. All right, that's running in the background. 5,000, 10,000, keep on going. Josh has compromising pictures of Tibbs. He's Tibbs' guy, man. Anytime they need him, they just throw up that bat signal. Anytime somebody slips and falls, Taj is there, waiting to. He's probably just got breakaway street clothes and his Knicks uniform on underneath, and he just buys a ticket for every game at this point. Sits behind the bench. Nick Ara's here. Nick ERA, Nick Ara. Not sure which way it goes, but Precious is the one sure thing today. I really like the spot. I'll tell you that much. As it simmed out, Amen Thompson is your more sure thing with gigantic quote marks around it. I'm probably saying that I think Precious, there's probably more security of delivering around that median projection, where Amen Thompson's going to look a little bit more like a roller coaster of results in this spot. But he does look great for the price. Anyway, let's get into some of the position-by-position breakdown here. Coming up on 5 o'clock. So yeah, Thompson, just the very top of the board here. Let me grab the numbers. Houston. I can't be the only child of the 80s who every time he sees the word Houston hears General Zod from Superman 2 saying, Houston. You just can't. So for the season, in 193 minutes, or excuse me, not for the season, for the last 30 days since January 6th, with no Fred VanVleet on the court, 193 minutes, 427 possessions. Amen Thompson's been at 1.26 FanDuel points per minute, which is like right on where we've got him now. Could he underperform that? Absolutely. With Freddie VanVleet, 280 minutes over the course of the last 30 days. Amen Thompson, 1.28 FanDuel points per minute. Obviously, some of that includes the same performance as the other one. But there's really not a crazy impact to his production. It's just stepping into the opportunity. So I love the spot. It makes total sense to fire away. We are dealing with the high-octane Indy team here. There should be plenty of scoring going back and forth. Indy... No, I don't have it ranked, do I? Nope, I was going to give you the 119.1 defensive rating. One of the higher marks in the league. And then Houston. What the hell order is this sorted in? And then Indy 120.7 on the offensive side. Top, I believe, still offensive rating. Yeah. Houston's just kind of middle of the pack in terms of their defensive rating. Offensive rating's not that good, but going up against Indy's defense should be plenty of upside for additional scoring from Houston. DiVincenzo, just plenty of upside, plenty of opportunity for him. Has just been on a hair trigger from 3 lately. Led the league in three-pointers made for the month of January. This is OG. Randall. Grimes. That's good enough. 1.06 fantasy points per minute for the last 30 days for Dante DiVincenzo, with the main culprits off the court, OG, Julius, and Quentin Grimes. That is basically exactly where I've got him for tonight, and he looks like the second strongest guard option on the FanDuel slate at 50.25% win rate, 57% of our top 150. Although that said, DSJ at 5,100, point guard only, versus shooting guard small forward, so you probably just get both of them a lot. But DSJ's landing in 79% of the top 150 on FanDuel against a 44% win rate. On DraftKings, DiVincenzo at 7,400 shooting guard small forward, 47% of the top 150 at a 43% win rate. And same story, Dennis Smith, 78% of the top 150 at a 46% win rate. So it looks like we're just extracting a lot of value out of guard. We'll probably see a good number of Amen Thompson, DSJ at one of the two guard spots, and then DiVincenzo in either the guard only, the forward only, or the small forward spot. But these three guys will probably be together in a lot of DraftKings lineups, and then you'll get to just a, whoops, don't want to do that. Just a big swath of the, expensive to mid-range guys going with them. That's probably really true for both sites, especially given how much ownership is going through those guys. Across three positions, that's 229% ownership there and 224 on DraftKings. Quite a bit. So DSJ does look strong. Again, coming off of 37.1 FanDuel points in 30.9 minutes the other night. 18% usage, right around the average. 1.04 FanDuel points per minute. 1.01 DraftKings points per minute. 51 on FanDuel at point guard only. 42 point guard and shooting guard. More utility on the DraftKings slate, but hits the board just as hard on FanDuel. Looks like not a lot of point guard value options. I oddly like DSJ a little bit better than I think Spencer Dinwiddie at 56. For one, is the better per minute performer. They have similar usage, 18.3 versus 18%. 34 minutes versus, what do I have DSJ at? 30 minutes. So Dinwiddie wins out on minutes by a little bit. But DSJ is projecting higher, hitting the board a little bit harder. Better price by 500 on FanDuel, by 900 on DraftKings. Dinwiddie's very playable. 16% win rate on FanDuel, 16% of the top 150. Just 9% on DraftKings, 6% of the top 150, 5,300 on the DK slate. Makes him a lot less playable over there, and definitely makes DSJ the better between those two options. Cam Thomas, also from that group. Just talking about the Nets right now. Thomas at 7,400, shooting guard and small forward on FanDuel. Definitely a strong scoring play. On DraftKings at 73, both guard spots. 18.29% win rate, 15% of our top 150. New York State of Mind for this slate. Anybody watched the Grammys the other night? Catch Billy Joel at the end of it? I'm sure there are people who were tuned into other performances throughout the Grammys more. Several artists I flat out did not know. Saw them win, saw them perform, so on and so forth. But a couple really cool ones. Like, whatever you might think of her and her music, Miley Cyrus's performance I thought was pretty undeniably fantastic. Don't know what the song was or anything, but she looked good. She sang good. The performance was killer. Crowd response was killer. Obviously, the Tracy Chapman one, the duet with the country guy. I think that took Fast Car to number one, I saw on iTunes yesterday. And then Billy Joel to round things out. It's pretty cool. It's just weird seeing, a guy like that at that star level. You don't often see people like that just saying, yeah, I'm not going to write any new songs for 30 years. Still performed, still did his, he was doing the residency at the Garden and everything. Yeah, 30 years went by between new songs. It's weird. Never liked his voice, he said. Oh, was it a Tina Turner song, Travis? I didn't recognize. Boss Johnson got injured, Walker got injured, Claxton got ejected. Stephen poked fun at people going all about Tracy Chapman who know maybe two of her songs. I know maybe two of her songs, three of her songs, but obviously a great artist. Nick doesn't play FanDuel anymore. Curious about DSJ on DraftKings. It's right there, bud. We talked about it too. 46.26% of the top 150. For people who aren't familiar with the setup, DK's over here. Top 1% win rates, top 150 in our sims. Projection, points per dollar, points per minute for the season. Salary position, obviously. And then FanDuel's over here. And then just some general info in the middle. This is the FanDuel points per... Whoops. This is the FanDuel points per minute for consistency. I should probably move this over here, but then my brain would fry. But our season-long games played, minutes per game, last game, results, minutes, fantasy points, and then their usage rate for the season. So yeah, DSJ looks like a play on both sites.
as do several pieces from the Nets. Jalen Green, we're talking about the opportunities available in Houston with no Freddie VV. Green's already at 26.5% usage, 0.97 FanDuel points per minute, 1.01 DraftKings points per minute. I shouldn't have taken down the Houston. I didn't say his number before with Freddie out, did I? He's been at 1.03 FanDuel points per minute, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute over 106 minutes in the last 30 days with no Fred VanVleet. And then for the season, this is Jalen Green. He's been at 1.08 over 304 minutes with no Fred VanVleet. It's a bit of a spike there. Nothing crazy, beyond where he would normally land in a 33-minute spot. Point guard and shooting guard for 71 on DraftKings. 10.6% of our top 150, 12% exposure 10.6% win rate, 12.6% exposure over a top 150. I wouldn't mind pushing a few additional shares. I just like that game environment. So I don't mind getting to additional pieces from either side of that, especially the ones that are hitting the board as hard as Jalen Green is. On FanDuel, 22.2%. Probably a little bit popular over there, coming up in just 18% of the lineups. But I have no issues with getting out to 22, 25% against that win rate. That's fine. Mikal Bridges. Apparently the Nets are claiming that they turned down an offer of 5 first-round picks for Bridges. It's aggressive. I like him too, but that is aggressive if true. Probably not exactly true. Probably a lot of contingencies baked into that offer. 18.25% win rate on FanDuel. Another guy who's probably just coming up a little bit light against some popularity. 7,900 shooting guard small forward. Let's see, what's he popular at on FanDuel? I tell you what, out of all the Nets, I mean, he's the 6th most popular as by far their most talented player. So that's kind of interesting. But the win rate is right around... the projected ownership is right around that win rate. So we are coming up a little bit light on the shares of Mikal Bridges against the field anyway. About half the field. On DraftKings, 24.4% win rate, 17% ownership. Same story. Just coming up a little bit lighter than his popularity. But with a good play like that in this game environment, I have no real issues pressing the gas pedal on that one a little. Dillon Brooks, yet another potential piece from Houston in that Houston-Indy game. Probably my least favorite overall. I just never really like getting to Dillon Brooks. Not only has he directly screwed me out of like 80 grand in the past with just stupid mistakes, just tends to be a big letdown player. 28.4 minutes the other night, 18.9 FanDuel points. It's not going to get you there. He's a 0.7 per minute guy despite 18% usage under normal circumstances. 0.72 on DK. Despite that 18% usage and being, a decently regarded player in certain ways. 11.3% win rate on DraftKings, getting to him at a 12% clip in the top 150. Higher than that on FanDuel, unfortunately. 18% win rate, 19% of the top 150. If you're trimming one guy from Houston, get under the field on. I don't have an issue really with that being 4,900 Dillon Brooks, 4,400 on DraftKings. I'll have some, but I might be a little bit below these simmed exposures. He is a reasonable enough value on a slate though that is limited for value, which is probably where he's extracting some of this win rate and some of these ownership shares. Just not a lot of great options from that price tier on either side. Dinwiddie I talked about, but again, just 0.89 FanDuel points at 18% usage, 0.92 DraftKings points. Playable, better on FanDuel. On DraftKings, just 9% win rate, 6% of your top 150. Alex Caruso definitely hit the board better on FanDuel. 14.9% win rate versus his 6% on DraftKings and 4% exposure. Just a playable piece on DraftKings is who he is. Kind of a night for Caruso. 0.89 points per minute. Good flexibility and a reasonable price. I mean, that's not a bad mid-range option on a slate like this, but not coming up all that often. So it just feels like he's getting boxed out by the Starsy Scrubsy kind of nature that this is going to pop up at. Oh, by the way, that rerun is this one? Does not look like we came up with Knicks formans. Now, there will be a little bit of, obviously, projection adjustment in the next one. But that reran sim that I did where I allowed 4 still just came up with 3s and 2s. So I think we're probably capping against 4 tonight with as many games are available. It's probably non-tragic to get there, but it might just be extending a value spot to one that doesn't need one to go to a 4th. So it would also depend on who that is. Like if you're telling me you've got a mid-range Devo, well, actually, it's not even. They're not even crazy values anymore. That's the thing. I'm gonna say 3 for whoever asked that question before. I think it's Beantown. Ricky, I hadn't heard that quote. That if Carlisle's saying his minutes are going up, it's Tyrese Halliburton. If he's playing, I mean, he's questionable last I saw. So let's get him on the court first. But if he goes, the moment he goes back to full minutes, he's right back to being a excellent player in most situations. Wednesday news, Wednesday. I don't have confirmation that he's in, and I don't have anything on that. Are you referring to? So Kevin Bowen on Twitter is saying, Kevin Bowen from Wake Up Call 1075 The Fan, apparently in the Indianapolis area, tweeted this morning, Rick Carlisle on Wake Up Call 1075, I got to assume that's the radio show that you're referring to, said Tyrese Halliburton could have gone back into the Charlotte game if needed. So kind of like the situation where he couldn't go back into the Knicks game when he was needed. And then the uptick in minutes wasn't actually a Carlisle quote from what I'm reading in this guy's tweet. It's him speculating that the uptick in minutes is there, but it's probably, I imagine, some kind of a situation where he asked a question along those lines and Carlisle said like, yeah, if I needed him for Charlotte, I would have been able to put him back in. So the assumption being that there could be a little bit of an uptick. I'm just seeing if there's any additional context in this thread. I'd love to see that in a little bit better form. That's definitely encouraging. Let me see where he's priced. If there's a discount there, I mean, we still do need him to get back to like 30 plus. He's 91 on FanDuel, 86 on DraftKings. I tell you what, that's he doesn't need that much more. He's basically at 30 fantasy points in 22 minutes. If I give him the 8 more, because it is cheap for Halliburton. Let's say they decide he's capped at 30 tonight. That gives him essentially 10 additional fantasy points. 8 new minutes gives him 1.36 FanDuel points per minute. So call it, roughly 10. Puts him at right around a 40-point projection. 9,100 point guard, 40 points, 86. Do we have a comp? Probably not. Let's see, 85. Kyrie is 8,500 point guard eligible and projected for 46 points on DK. And he hit the board 20% of the time, 16% of your top 150. So Halliburton, for 100 more, is projected about 6. If I give him 30 minutes, is projected about 6 raw points below where Kyrie is here. The question becomes how much of Kyrie's value here lands in shooting guard because Halliburton's point guard only. But I would suspect, given that Kyrie is 100 less with 6 additional fantasy points, that's probably going to just catch any of that Tyrese value that could have opened up against a 40-point projection. DK, it's 41.8. So it is a little bit closer, but still 4.5 points in between there. He'd probably hit the board a little. Call it the 5% kind of range, maybe. Getting to him 5% of the time. I think he would be in that kind of a territory. Well, oh no, that's him. I was like, well, here's an $8,600 point guard. This is him going in, and he didn't get there at all, right? 0.01% of the top 150 in that 30-point projection. So I think he'd still be probably lowish single digits, but he'd obviously be way more on the board. The question just becomes what the ceiling looks like for price. On FanDuel, he would be 9,100 and getting that same bump. It puts, again, reasonably fairly comped to Kyrie there against 93, Kyrie being the slightly more expensive of the two on FanDuel. 14% win rate, 7% of our top 150 for Kyrie at that price. Probably not, just because I feel like so much of point guard is going to go to these guys. So I think we probably still need a little bit more for Tyrese to really deliver, for the Sims to come through. But he's getting back there. If they came out and said, hey, he's playing his full 35, 30, what is the average? Oh, that's his last game. 32-2. They said, yeah, he's coming out and playing 33 minutes tonight, 34 minutes tonight. Gets you closer, certainly. That puts him probably on par with like where Kyrie is. But I think probably, if there's an uptick at all, we're probably dealing with just a couple minutes. Good question, though, Ricky. Appreciate that one. That was something that was not on my radar that comment had come out at all. So one to keep an eye on for sure. And if we do get a bolt from the sky of full minutes for Tyrese, and especially if we get that, whether it's today, his next game, in a situation where they haven't readjusted pricing, that's going to be hopefully a fire away kind of a spot. The best situation would be to have him come out, play like 26, 28 tonight, have a total clunker that the algo accidentally lowers his salary. That would be sweet. Anyway. So Caruso looks moderately playable on FanDuel at 14% win rate, but only came up in 8% of the top 150. Talked about him on DraftKings, but just mid-single digits over there. Kyrie, definitely playable on both sites. Just talked about him as the comp point for Halliburton. But again, 8,500 both guard spots on DK, 20% win rate, 16% of our top 150. And as I mentioned, certainly not something it's not the reason that the play is good. The play is already good. He does have the added Brooklyn thing going into it on the anniversary of the trade. Like I said at the top of the show, I am not one to chase narratives at all. But when I do think about them, it is in this specific, unique basketball situation in which a primary ball handler, facilitator, a guy who can call his own number again and again and again and again and has the ability to deliver in that situation. He's already at a 28% usage rate, 1.29 FanDuel points, 1.31 DraftKings points per minute at a fairly good price. This is the situation where maybe that does get a little bit of credence. A little bit of, all right, Kyrie might want to just destroy these guys tonight. And it also puts a competitive piece on the board when we're getting plenty of the Brooklyn side. So I like that as well, just getting a little bit of answer back from him, getting a little bit of answer back from Luka. Luka just at 1.49. If you look down in row 67 down there, the big green in the points column. 2% of your top 150 on FanDuel. Much, much better on DraftKings, though. Luka, 17.6% win rate on DK. 18.6% of our top 150. DK, you're creating a lot of salary to be able to get to Luka. $12,000 over there, but that's where your $4,100 Amen Thompson is paying for. That's why Luka's able to come up that much. Couple lines up from Luka there at 36. We've got Chris Dunn hitting the DraftKings board a little. Trying to look for the differentiated plays in reverse today because we were sorted by FanDuel. So 17.37% win rate for Chris Dunn. 3,600 point guard, small forward, 21% of your top 150. Just another price-driven piece of value on a very Starsy Scrubsy looking DraftKings slate. At 10.5 point guard only, SGA is coming up at a 27.9% win rate and 38% of our top 150. So, I mean, it is pretty clear that with 56% of point guard ownership going to Luka and SGA, it kind of draws a straight line for how starsy scrubsy this is. And then you factor in that another 160% there. So between those four guys, two of whom are point guard only, two of whom are point guard shooting guard, that's 234% of your ownership across those positions. Point guard, shooting guard, guard, util. It's a lot. And I could have thrown Dante DiVincenzo into that mix at 47% to make it even more. I just suspect that he's going to mostly land at small forward there. Dunn only ended up going 22 the other night and just 13.6 FanDuel points. He's a low usage guy, 13.6% usage rate. There is definitely that to worry about. Nobody else really popping on DK that wasn't on FanDuel. 5.9% win rate for Cam Whitmore. Just another piece from Houston with 20-ish minutes. 1.16 per minute on DK for the season. He's only played 26 games, about 17 minutes a night, but has had a couple of deliveries in spots like this. Not off the board by any means, but not a priority. 5% win rate, 2% of our top 150. 3% win rate, 1% of the top 150 going to a $7,500 Kobe White. Just an is who he is kind of a night, or who you are kind of a night for him. Terry Rozier, definite downturn in the per minute numbers in Miami so far, but only 6,300 both guard spots. Landed in just 0.46% of 0% of the top 150. 0.46% of the winners though, not coming up nearly at all. Timmy Hardaway, interestingly, not really hitting the board on either site. Just a lot of health all of a sudden in Dallas again. Still some missing bodies for sure, but the backcourt got healthy. $3,300 Aaron Holiday, I did refer to quickly before. 24 minutes in Houston, 4,000 on the FanDuel slate, hits the board 11% of the time as a winner and 12% in our top 150 on FanDuel. 9% against 8% exposure against the 9% win rate on the DraftKings slate. Ooh, Mike Conley also on the board here. About where Conley's been recently, I think. 13% winner, 9% exposure on FanDuel, 10% winner, 8% exposure on DraftKings. Play him as you do. Mike Conley, not a lot changes other than the price, just moves him his results up or down. Anybody we didn't talk about? Jalen, obviously, has just been torching the world. I think it was in the 1.3s when I looked it up earlier. It should be right around whatever I've got him at for tonight, actually. Yeah, mid 1.3s. They're going to at 1.34 for tonight. When these Knicks, it still does apply. Like guys like Dante DiVincenzo. When they're not hitting their threes, Miles McBride as well, Deuce McBride. When those threes aren't falling, and fortunately they've been largely falling, or there's just so much volume for a guy like DiVincenzo lately that it doesn't matter as much. But they still do need to get to make those shots, both to keep the Knicks offense rolling at all. And they've hit a couple of stretches in games recently. Most notably, I think it was in the fourth quarter the other day against LA, the game that they lost. They went like 8 minutes without scoring a bucket, which is wild. Speaking of which, Ryan Arcidiacono, however the hell you say his last name, Arcidiacono, doesn't get into games all that often. 2.3 minutes per game over his 20 games played during this season. Little spots here and there, garbage time type minutes. Has not scored a point all season long. That's an NBA record by 2 games now. All the Knicks were tweeting that at him the other day. It's pretty funny. But yeah, he's 0 for 6 from the field, all from 3. But what I really thought was funny is if you take a look at his per 36 numbers off of those. Let's see if I've got it. Per 36, he's at 6.4 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.6 turnovers, and 4.8 missed threes per 36. Ryan Arcidiacono. Might get 2 or 3 scrap minutes tonight, but not on our board. Even with Sims out, I don't think we're getting anything there. Tiz says Matherin just got ruled out. That's always fun. Tiz hopes Luka sits. I don't. I want a nice, straightforward kind of a night. I actually like the way this board looks right now. Give me these minor changes around guys like Ben Matherin. I'm all right with that. But I like the way this board looks. Let's get into the forward side of things. So Matherin coming out does scrap another chunk of minutes. I must have just changed something by accident there. Their total is off. That's weird. Oh, there it goes. It was just dragging. All right. We're back. So yeah, creates 26 minutes to just kind of spread around, I think. Got a lot of just mixed bag kind of high teens group of minutes there. That could feed a little bit of the idea of... that's why it was off, because I gave Tyrese the additional minutes. That's right. That could feed the idea of just, with minutes available. Good reason to give Tyrese a few additional. Yeah, I don't know that feeds directly into any one person, though. From where I've already got him. Let's see who was coming up. So at the forward positions, 50% win rate for Royce O'Neal, 50% win rate for Dante DiVincenzo on FanDuel, getting to them like crazy in both, for both of them, and then same story on DraftKings, 28% win rate for Royce O'Neal, 30% of our top 150. Another player, not the easiest person in the world to trust for DFS purposes, 0.80 FanDuel points per minute, 0.82 DraftKings points per minute, just 13% usage. Not great, but we've got a lot of bodies out in Brooklyn. On the season, shooting 36% from 3 on 5.3 takes a game. 8.7% rebounding rate, 15.5% assist rate. Moderate output in terms of points. A playable part for sure. The price is correct on both sites. Forward eligible at both positions on both sites. Definitely a working part on this slate. But one for whom, there's a little bit of reason to be a little skeptical about, or at least a little uncomfortable with having as much of them as you're going to probably want to. Precious looks very strong. He was already projected at a monster number of minutes. He's been playing monstrous minutes for the last couple of days with all the injuries and absences and the lunatic nature of the head coach. 42.5 minutes the other night. Put up just 21 FanDuel points. It's not going to get you there, really. But overall, for the course of the season, 0.97 per minute. I think he's a little higher than that when I looked it up earlier in the day in his recent stretch. Oh, no, actually a little bit lower. For the recent stretch, the output since he's been in the starting lineup is actually at 0.84, but still better than this. Jonathan Isaac, both forward spots, 4,400, just a 19-minute projection, 31% win rate on FanDuel, 38% of our top 150. Just one of the few discounted pieces on FanDuel that aren't from that just totally common pool. What's his ownership? Ooh, you're going to be popular over there. He's hitting the board harder on FanDuel than his projected ownership. We're ahead of the field there. Our win rate is ahead of the field's projected ownership, which is good. That's how we want it. On DraftKings, it's more right around the field. At 3,600, power forward and center eligible. One of the first big man values that we've talked about when we're talking positionally. Jalen with an E, questionable. Jalen with an I, also questionable. An I and a Y, I guess. Jalen with an E, if he plays, looks very strong. 31.3% winner on FanDuel, 39% of our top 150 on DraftKings, just under 20% winner. 28% of our top 150. Actually looks pretty good there in terms of the exposure. He's projected less than half that. A little bit less than half of that exposure. So we are well ahead of the field at 7,000 on Jalen Williams if he's out there. Josh Hart, low usage, does a lot on the court in terms of rebounds, steals, gets his hand on the ball, takes threes, hasn't been shooting that great from three this season. He's in the low 30s last I saw, and he continues to sit in the low 30s. 30.2, that's gone down. I think he was 31% the other day. But a 13.4% assist rate, 11.4% rebounding rate, and another Nick who is likely to play around 40 minutes tonight. 41.6 the other night, 32.2 FanDuel points, 6,600. That's okay. It's not exactly what you want, but it's also not completely tragic. Just like a serviceable kind of a number. He doesn't have a crazy ton of ceiling beyond this. The 50-point games are really, really few and far between. But the high 30s, the 40s, like a standard deviation on top of this. This is right around his projected number. So there's a little bit more room there from Josh Hart. Santi Aldama, 23.9% on the other side of that game. A little bit appealing there. He's cheap, 6,100 point power forward and center eligible on FanDuel. Same positioning, 57 on DraftKings. Has him in 14% winners, 12% of the top 150. Other Memphis pieces, since they are here, David Roddy, Vince Williams. Vince, just a 4.03% winner. Still questionable on FanDuel. 0.67% of our top 150. Didn't land well at all. On DraftKings, just 1.27% winner. 0% of our top 150. And then, there's Roddy. Roddy a little bit better. Not on DraftKings. 5,400 on DK. They're caught up to him. I'd say that's a little high probably. 4.03 points per dollar projected, 0.63% win rate, 0% of our top 150. On FanDuel, he's still just 5,000. Small forward, power forward, 16.9% win rate, getting to him less than that. Probably against a little popularity. Yep. He is the most popular player on their team on FanDuel today. That's saying something. Not a lot of really strong projected options right now from Memphis. It's weird. I mean, it's a low total in that game. We do have a couple pieces like Santi and everybody, but the prices are just all kind of correctly adjusted, I guess, for the generally low output here. Right now, Roddy and Aldama, just like we're seeing it here, are basically the Memphis guys showing value. Lowry Markkanen, always pretty playable. Better on FanDuel, 19% winner, 13% of your top 150. On DraftKings, 12%, basically across the board. Bit of an uptick site to site for Mikal Bridges. He's a 24% winner on DraftKings, 17% popularity in our top 150. On FanDuel, 18.2% winner, but just 8% of our top 150. We looked at him before. He was coming up a little higher on than that. Siakam, 9% winner on DraftKings, getting him a little bit less. I have no issues if you wanted to push that out to like 10%, though, obviously. Plenty of upside in that Houston-Indy game. 8,300, both forward spots. A solid 40-point projection, 1.14 points per minute over the last 30 days with Indy. He's been 1.18 per minute on FanDuel. 1.18 per minute on FanDuel and 1.20 on DraftKings. This is Pascal Siakam. And I've got him at exactly those numbers tonight. I guess he's more playable on the FanDuel slate. 17% win rate, 15% of our top 150. But definitely can sneak him into some lineups on DraftKings for sure. Roddy, we talked about. Aaron Nesmith, like the three-point shooting. 46% from three. He's only taking 4.7 a game. You'd like to see more. 66% true shooting rate for the season, 46.3% from 3, making 2.2 out of 4.7. What did he give him minutes wise? Gave him 33 already. No Ben Mathurin. He might, pick up a scrap minute or so as I'm just spreading things around. But definitely at Worston is who he is kind of a spot. 64, both forward spots on FanDuel, already was hitting the board 15% of the time, 16% of our top 150. 10.1% of the time against 10% of our top 150 on DraftKings, small forward only for 5,700. Last time out, 38.6 FanDuel points in 33 minutes. It's about right. Want a little bit more. I'd like to get him over 40, but not terrible. Paulo Banchero, 40-point projection, a little bit of ceiling beyond that. 14% winner on FanDuel, 6.4% winner on DraftKings. A couple of the more differentiated guys. Got some double-digit types to work with here on DK. $7,600 DeMar DeRozan. $7,900 Karl Anthony Towns, both 13% win rates, call it. Getting more DeRozan in the top 150 than we are Towns. Probably just an impact from the positioning. Towns being power forward and center versus the small forward, power forward for DeRozan. Probably we're getting some of that DeRozan share slipping into small forward, and that's where he's gaining a little bit more shares. Kelly O at 4,200, power forward center. An okay dart throw of just correctly priced for about 20 minutes of Kelly Olynyk. 11.9% winner, just under 15% of the top 150. On a slate that's short on value, sometimes we do have to grab just those guys that are solid per minute producers, even though they're only projected 20, 22 type minutes. He's at a 1.10 per minute on the season for DK. Jabari looks reasonable on FanDuel. All those guys look reasonable on FanDuel, by the way, just slightly better on DraftKings. Jabari's at 9.5% winner on FanDuel, 13% of our top 150. On DraftKings, 16.17% winner and 18% of the top 150. Franz Wagner, also hitting the board at double digits on DraftKings, single digits on FanDuel, and creeping into the low single digits on FanDuel. 1.08 per minute on the season at this point. 7,900, it's not a terrible price to pay for him. I like him better for 71 on DK, though. Maxi Kleber, assuming he's out there, should get starting minutes again. Played 27.5, put up 28 FanDuel points the other night. It's reasonable enough for 4,600. He's only a .66 performer on the season. 11.8% usage rate. That's only across 15 games. 20 minutes a night. He was... And we are actually below that in this projection. We're right around what he's done over the last chunk since he's been back, which is about 0.57. So arguably you could go even a little bit higher on Maxi Kleber, which you would probably need to do to make him at all valuable on either one of these sites. 3.19% winner on FanDuel, 2% winner, 2% of our top 150, and not that relevant on DraftKings. Done, we talked about. Nobody here on FanDuel relevant. Couple single-digit guys. 7% winner for Fontecchio. 5.9% for a $3,500 Aaron Wiggins. Just a value price-driven play there. Same thing with Naz Reid at 43, just price-driven. 46 for Cam Whitmore, I mentioned before. Reasonable per-minute production in this situation. Only 22 minutes, but 4,600 hits the board a little bit as a value play. See what you guys are talking about. Aldama, Conchar, Derrick Rose, and Vince Williams all still with question marks on the 530. I do expect Derrick Rose to get out there. Garden, all that. Collect his kudos. But who knows? It's an interesting question, Beantown. Saw Poku for 7 minutes 2 games ago. Hasn't been out there a lot. What's his game log look like? Has he played any games with any kind of significance? He's only been over 9 minutes once this season. That was back on October 29th. Played 14 minutes that night, minus 11. Every other appearance has been in the 1 to 8.5 minute range. Even if we get him, I don't think we get him. Unless it's like a, everybody's out, break glass. Poku is going to play 24 minutes tonight, guaranteed kind of a situation. I don't think we're going to get DFS relevance out of him. Might see him on the court, to your question, for a couple of minutes. But yeah, I think it's a little stretch to assign him DFS relevance. At 3,000, I mean, on DraftKings, he's dead min 3,000. Let me see what I would need to have him at to have a relevant enough projection. Let's see if I can find you enough reason to think about him. I think we have to start at like 16 minutes to put him on the board, maybe. Oof. Yeah, that's a tough ask. Even if I gave him 16 minutes, we're still talking about like just under 11 DraftKings points. And I haven't looked at any of what it looks like this season. He's been at 0.54. Last year he was dead on the nose at 1. So, I mean, I think it's fair to split the difference there, which is the way that the model treats it for guys who haven't played much. If you could tell me that he was going to play 20 minutes, I could maybe endorse a couple of shares at the dead min on DraftKings. That gets him to like 13.5. And then if I wanted to give him credit for the fantasy point per minute player that he was in his action that he got last year, I could knock that up to another 2 points maybe. That splits the difference almost exactly between 0.54 and 1.0. We're at 0.77. That puts him at a 15.5. But I mean, look at how many steps I had to add on to the possibility of him even playing tonight before we even got to relevance. So I don't think so. Unless, barring some kind of news from the team being in the starting lineup, of course. Barring something like that, I don't think we get enough out of him to hit DFS value. Poor Poku. Let's see. Freddie last missed. I mean, partial answer because Amen's a much, much better per minute guy. Opening too many tabs. 21st. So the last time he missed, it was Amen in the starting lineup. I pulled it up because I wanted to double check that Holiday was there that day, and he was. So Amen played 32 minutes, including significant run in all 4 quarters, including a 7.5 minute stretch to close the game that he actually played alongside Aaron Holiday, who was out there for the entire 4th quarter of that game. Holiday ended up going 27 in that one. There are a couple other missing pieces, I think, just eyeballing it. Let me put it side by side so I can figure out who that is. That was yes, Amen, Dylan, Cam. That was a no Jabari game, right? No Jabari. I think he's the only significant piece that was missing. They also there's other downboard guys like Jock Landale, Nate Williams played in that game. Might have been like a Jeff Green missing type day. But yeah, I think, presuming that Amen is back in the starting lineup, I think we're just looking at that same kind of a setup. 30-ish minutes for him, mid-20s minutes for Aaron Holiday. If Amen's not playing well, maybe Holiday picks up second half minutes more than he does. you could argue that it could be evenly split. I think however you went about it, though, Amen would still look like a very good play because I don't think it's really that reasonable to take him down below 26. Even if you didn't think he was going to get a lot of run, 24, even if I directly reversed it. Giving it a direct reversal to playing him just 24 minutes, he still looks pretty decent. I would change the rates from what it is here a little bit. I would want to tweak it a little, but he's just been a good per minute player. I take away the bonus opportunity that I gave him. We'd still be talking about, on DraftKings especially for 4,100, we'd still be talking about a mid-20s projection at worst. That's taking away all the bonus rate I gave him. That's taking away all the, that's putting him down at 24 minutes. Where he would become a little bit more questionable in that scenario would probably be FanDuel at 56. But again, there's just not a lot of options on this slate for value. It's the crazy high pace game. It's a game against, the highest end offense with a bad defense. So there's just the idea of plenty of scoring. He's one of their better per minute options tonight. So I like the spot barring news to the contrary. Let's put it that way. And you'll see any news to the contrary come through in the projections. Now let me undo all those changes that I just did so that I don't have to fix the projections later. Or so that I don't accidentally not fix it, I guess is what I should say. All right, so that's done. And then I'm actually going to put a flag on Tyrese here just so I remember. All right. Josh Green versus Amen if Luka is out as a pivot. It's probably still Amen. Green. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a massive gulf in points per minute value that they've delivered this season. Green for the year has been at 0.66. I've already got Green getting 30 minutes tonight and just below 20 fantasy points on both sites. So, yeah, I think it's still pretty strongly Amen Thompson. I'll give you the no Luka rate real quick because that is how you ask the question. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Winding things down, just answering some questions from you guys. We've got centers up on the board right now. Yes, right. Well, come on. Why don't we take Luka out? That's why he had put him in that spot there. Got centers up on the board right now. We're going to talk through those. We're going to look at the sim lineups that came through real quick in a second. As soon as I can answer the pressing question of the day: what is Josh Green's fantasy points per minute rate with no Luka Doncic for the year? Courtesy of NBA Wowie, which is now addmorefunds.com, of course, for the last few years. addmorefunds.com/NBA/Wowie. Wowie, for those of you that don't know, stands for with or without you. And for some reason, it does not want to deliver us this information right now. It's getting those green bars. It's the most frustrating loading screen I think I deal with anywhere. Other than when my Excel sheet freezes when I'm trying to just sort a column, Wowie not loading stuff up quickly is probably my most frustrating computer wait these days. Remember the days of that? You still get it with I'm downloading a 60 gig game from Steam or something like that. You still get, obviously, downloading bars and stuff. But remember when saving a 20 meg file is a 3-minute process? Like that moment in Office Space when he's trying to get out of the office and it's the bar as the boss's Lumberg is approaching and the bar is gradually creeping up and up. That's what it used to be like. All right, this just isn't loading. I don't know why. Maybe the entire industry right now is trying to answer that question for Beantown. He's probably on multiple streams. He's asking the guys from Stochastic. He's asking the guys from Run Pure. Who else is out there? RG. I should know at least who like the other sites are, you'd think, right? I don't know. It's feeling like a Jabari night for Travis. At Beantown, I'd love to give you that number, but it is just not popping up there. You know where to find it, though. I know you know how to use that site. If you're feeling it on the spot, you know, there's obviously will be some potential run for him. He would probably grab a couple 3 additional minutes, a little bit of additional rate, I expect. Right now, under the 20-ish fantasy points, he's still pulling like a. Oh, we're talking DK for you, so he's still pulling like a. He's low on DK. I wasn't expecting his ownership to be that low. He's only like 1% owned because he's 51 on that DraftKings slate. Low single digits ownership. You'd be getting yourself to a unique play. I still do think that my initial answer was the correct one, though, in that even with the ownership, the popularity, at a better price and a much better per minute rate with all the opportunity in the world in front of him, unless something changes, I think you probably still want him in that spot. You're talking about 51 for Josh Green at, even if he sees a bit of an uptick, what are we talking? 0.75, 0.8, probably somewhere in that territory. I'm just speculating. Versus like a kind of locked in 1+ for 41. That's a big, big price difference. Those guys aren't really same tier. That's 1,000 price difference. So I think I stick with my initial gut there. But, if you're working him into a couple of lineups as an alternative, as a pivot, and as I always say, as long as you go into that play, eyes open to what you're doing, to me, that's the most important part. You're not just picking a guy at random. You've got reasons for doing it. You've got, you've assessed the salary, the impact to your lineup, and so on and so forth. If you're going into a play like that, eyes wide open, then sure. A couple of shares, especially if it's a couple of shares across a big portfolio. If you're building one lineup for, the fantasy basketball championships with, millions of dollars on the line, do I make that play? Probably not. Would I try and talk you out of it a little bit stronger? Probably. But for a slate like this, it's okay-ish. Wouldn't be my choice, but it's okay-ish. Good enough? Gotta talk about these centers. Precious, we've talked about several times. Looks great on both sides. Plenty of opportunity for him. Been just getting crazy minutes for the Knicks. There is a little bit of potential in a points per minute sense. He's been at 0.97 for the season. It was mid 0.8 and change over the last handful of games. But just the minutes are absurd right now for that tight core for the Knicks. Isaac, we touched on. Santi Aldama, we touched on. Şengün looks very good on both sites. Center only, one of the few center only options on either site. 9,200 on FanDuel, giving us a 22.9% win rate and landing in 33% of the top 150. I like that a lot. Same on DraftKings, 17% win rate and nearly 30% of the top 150. So we are probably, I would guess, ahead of the field there. Yeah, it looks like we're coming up ahead of the field on DraftKings and a little bit ahead of the field on both sites on Şengün, which is where I like to be. 1.33 fantasy points per minute on the season, 1.34. Believe it's higher than that with no Freddie. For today, we've got 1.41 today, which I think was right around the number. I think it might have been a little higher. I think it was a couple hundredths of a point higher than that. And I said, let's cool it here. but looks like a very strong option across sites. Love the power forward eligibility for Cat, of course. 10.5% win rate on FanDuel, 8.6% over top 150. Similar returns on DraftKings, 12.8% with 6% coming through the top 150. Another center-only option in Chet, 8,100 on FanDuel, 7,500 on DraftKings. 13% winner and getting into 24% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Fairly significant. 9.8% winner and 12% over top 150 on FanDuel. Let's talk about the guys with significance. So just under 12% for a $4,200 Kelly O on the DraftKings slate, and also getting him 9% of the top 150 with a 9.8% win rate on FanDuel for 5,100. Center and power forward, little flexibility of positions. Another guy just a fair lower mid type price on FanDuel and pretty much a value price on DraftKings at the $4,200 mark. On a day with not a ton of existing value, at least when this sim ran. Collins at 8.7% winner, 8.37 for Hartenstein, 7% for Nick Claxton on FanDuel. Among those guys, the big differentiated piece is Hartenstein on the DraftKings slate. At just 6,400, he stands out. 15.4% win rate, 21% of the top 150. So if we're sorted by DraftKings, Hartenstein is more in this territory. He's above Cat. Actually, it looks like there's nobody who matters that's not in the... where the hell is Brolo? Oh, did I... No, they would still come up. This is what I was talking about with the column sorting. That's why. We do have a couple guys to talk about. There's Brolo. Just a 1.9% winner on your FanDuel slate, 2% of your top 150. There's Nurk at 3% winner, 2.6% of your top 150. So neither one of those guys from that exception game that is on FanDuel that is not on DraftKings are coming through. And then Bobby Portis, despite a good projection for the 65, also not really coming through all that strong. I have no issues with playing any one of those guys. I always like getting to a low-owned Brook Lopez. I don't really go out of my way for Portis all that often at correct pricing when he's only at normalized minutes. But I think he's got a little bit of typical Bobby Portis type upside. Not really mathing out for it though. Nurk is fine, playable-ish. And then I just want to talk through that game real quick since it wasn't... I was sorting by DraftKings positions that whole time, or filtering by DraftKings positions and sorting by FanDuel win rates, so these guys were left out of those conversations. So KD, 8.5% winner, getting into a little bit less than that in the top one, or a little bit more than that in the top 150. He's the biggest piece from that game in terms of slate relevance, although Giannis landed in 8.67, same amount of the top 150, despite just a 4.5% win rate, just on the sheer power of that projection and the ceiling that it creates. So Giannis, KD, both highly playable on FanDuel, or playable on FanDuel. Bradley Beal, a little bit less so, 5% winner, just 2% over top 150. Middleton, 4% winner, 3% of the top 150. Book, just under 4% winner, 6% of the top 150. Those are your relevant guys. Obviously, you can play a few shares of Nurk. Obviously, you can play a few shares of Dame. Somebody was mentioning in the chat earlier Dame dealing with an ankle, so keep an eye on that, obviously. $87. I might expect Dame to hit the board a little bit harder with a 40-point projection for 8,700. Point guard only on a flexy kind of slate where a lot of value is going through the guard spots, so maybe he's just getting squeezed given his not high price given for Dame Lillard, but higher price compared to a lot of other options positionally on this slate. Nobody else really showing much relevance from that game, but a few pieces. And then our final centers. Miles Turner. Looks like just a Miles Turner is Miles Turner kind of night. 5% winner on both sides. Not really coming up significantly in the top 150. John Collins, 8.7% winner on FanDuel, 12% of the top 150, just 4% on DK, not as relevant on DraftKings. Nobody else really standing out. A lot of playable guys. Bam is totally playable on both sites. 7.29% winner on DraftKings. Sub 3% winner on FanDuel, but plenty of upside for your 8,300. Somebody in chat asked about Rudy Gobert before. I'm not looking at the chat screen right now. But Gobert on FanDuel, not great. 1.16% win rate, 2.67% of your top 150. You won a few, but doesn't really pop at 8,000. On DraftKings at 6,900, he pops decently. 10.39% win rate. Getting to him less than that in the top 150. Probably picking up a little bit more popularity over there. He's popular right around that win rate, actually a little bit ahead of this win rate. So I like it. You know, this is essentially half the projected popularity. I'd say yes to some Gobert. He is playable and more playable on DraftKings on this slate to answer that question. But I would want him below the field, I think. Field's getting a little out ahead of themselves on Rudy. That's about it. Let me pull up these sims. It is after 6. Close some of these other windows. Sims, courtesy of our pals over at acemind.io. Just as an example of something I've mentioned with these guys recently, or throughout. Anytime you run into tech support, I had a little question for them. I dropped it in Discord at 4:10, and it was fixed within 8 minutes. Not bad. When it comes to like getting a response and not just getting like a "we're working on it" kind of corporate response. Our experts are looking into the problem right now. We anticipate having a solution ready for you in the next blah, 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 blah. These guys just went and fixed the problem. Took them 8 minutes. And on top of that, the product's pretty damn cool. acemind.io, optimizer, simulator, PGA, NFL, which is winding down, NBA. I know they're working on NASCAR, MMA, MLB, a lot of other stuff. MLB starting up soon too. So I didn't rerun that DraftKings because I don't think we're going to get those 4-man situations. So this is the original DK one. Obviously, since he came up in like 99% of these, we're getting a lot of Amen Thompson, either at the point guard or the shooting guard. He's in pretty much all of these. Goes without saying he's going to be in a lot of your lineups tonight. Dennis Smith Jr. landing in a lot of lineups. To answer that question, though, we do have an Aaron Holiday right there. I'm sure there's a few more. So he's not without value. Jalen Green, who we talked about from that same group. Definitely looks like we're getting our fair share of 3-man Rockets lineups. Bunch of 2s. 2 Rockets, 2 Knicks, 3 Rockets, 2 Knicks, 2 Knicks, 3 Knicks, 2 Rockets. Right there. Lot of consideration just going around those two teams right now. DiVincenzo looks very strong. Mikal Bridges looks very strong. Precious is a good option. Şengün is coming up like crazy in the center spot. Chet Holmgren coming up a decent amount in the center spot. Our differentiated Hartenstein shares are coming through a little bit here. Not so much in the power forward. Is he center only on DK? Might be center only. So it looks like Hartenstein falls a little bit short of the very top of the board when we're going by ROI. But I mean, we're talking about differences of very, very minor differences between this lineup and that lineup. A lot of SGAs and Lukas coming through in the util spot. So it does look like it's just going like value guy, value guy. Mid-ish. You're mid like Royce, Brooks, Devo. You do have a few odd like Bridges, DeRozans in here, but more Royce, Chris Dunn, A lot of Devo, Dylan Brooks coming through the small forward. So it's more mid-type value going through here. Same thing at power forward. Looks like mid with a little bit of spend available for like a cat. But mostly you're getting like Royce, Precious, Jabari. There's a Jalen Williams. Yeah, that's okay. Slow-mo we didn't talk about at all. So mostly, again, like midi kind of savings at power forward. And then we get spendy at center with our Chets and our Shinguns, a few Hartensteins around the edges, a few Preciouses. Preciouses? My Preciouses. Guard, we're back to some flexibility, I guess, but it's really just probably a matter of like this one's got SGA here and DSJ here, and this one's got SGA here and DSJ there. These ones have no acronyms at all. Kyrie, Luka. That one's got Gobert, Kyrie, Luka. It is very Starsy Scrubsy, though. Shingun, SGA, Gobert, Luka. Gobert, Luka buys you another option there, which is kind of interesting. Or like Hartenstein, Luka buys you a little bit more of like a little bit more reliability, whatever you want to call it. You get Devo and McHale in that one with Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Kelly O, and DSJ here. So there is, I think, a critical spend decision that impacts whether it's extreme stars scrubs or one superstar, two B plus type guys, and then your values, or you're trying to shoot to like two superstars, and I'm using that term kind of loosely with Shingun. 2 stars and a lot of scrubs. And I think that decision probably falls around these center shares, where you're getting either Shingun or you get Gobert, Hartenstein, Chet to some extent, or even cheaper. I think that's where we're creating, because most of the other guys are common across these lineups, right? Amen Thompson, DSJ, DiVincenzo, Chris Dunn, Precious is in a lot of these. So like a lot of those shares are really common. And then you've just got your pivots around the star spot, whether you're spending on Luka, SGA, whoever it is. And then that center decision really dictates whether you get like a McHale, Shingun, SGA, or just like a Shingun, SGA. Although actually that one's got Jalen. Maybe you do get the third guy anyway. You get Jalen Green and Jalen Williams there. I do think the center spot is going to be a pretty key position on DraftKings, though. Just the way that these decision points fall. Like if you were hand building out 150 of these, that would be, I think, your key pivot point for like how you would track how you keep values and stuff, and how much you're using these guys in combination with one another. Starsy Scrubsy night, though. That top lineup's pretty killer. 0.51% win rate. Win probability, $692 coming back on average on your 15. That top one was Amen, Jalen, Royce, Jalen Green, and then Jalen Williams, who may not play. Shingun, DSJ, Chris Dunn, SGA. 3 Houston, 2 Brooklyn. There's a lot of money on the table for such a good lineup, and for such a Starsy Scrubsy night. That's actually kind of interesting here too. 49-6 in that one, 49-8, 49-8, 49-5. Given that we were talking about those lineups in terms of like we're making scrubsy decisions and want to be able to maybe spend more, given there's 500 more to spend in this lineup, maybe you get to somebody a little bit more reliable than Jonathan Isaac's low minutes. I like Isaac when he's playing a bunch. He's a good per minute performer, but you know, if you just wanted to look at the bare minutes of it, you could say I've got $500. Maybe I can do a little better than Jonathan Isaac in that forward spot. So it looks like we're very Starsy Scrubsy with a few $100 to play with. Don't mind that. We'll do the second of these FanDuel sims. See if it came up any different. Lot of Dennis Smith Jr. Holy hell. A lot of Amen Thompson. I'd say by and large, the FanDuel lineups look a little slightly more balanced. There are a lot of the same names overall. But FanDuel, I feel like we're getting more lineups with multiple good guys that I feel good about playing. You got a DSJ and Amen Thompson, but you've got Jalen Brunson. There's a lot of Jalen's on this slate. Jalen Brunson, Jalen Williams, Neesmith, who's fine, Dylan Brooks, who's fine, but Siakam and Chet Holmgren. This one, I get Deuce and DSJ, but I get Kyrie. I get Jalen Williams again. I get Cam Thomas, who's got a pretty high upside tonight. KD, John Collins, kind of balanced one. Yeah, FanDuel's definitely a little bit more balanced, but we've got a lot of the same themes, right? It's Amen, it's DSJ, it's various pieces from Houston, it's various pieces from the Knicks. A lot of Chet, a lot of Alperen Şengün, a few shares of Bam and Precious falling into the center spot, but it does look like mostly Chet and Şengün again at center. I don't know that it's as strong a decision point, though. Just seems like there's a little bit more balance of spending on FanDuel today. Mostly, well, no, I can't even say that. We're alternating between value, spend, value, obviously. Value, spend. I don't see any spend. So we're not doubling up. Brunson Dinwiddie, I think, is the most expensive combo in this group at the very top. So we're most likely not doubling up expensive players at point guard on FanDuel, but you can get one. You can get Jalen, or you can get SGA, or you can, I'm sure, get Luka, although he doesn't come up nearly as much as he was on DraftKings, and that followed through in our results. Shooting guard, it looks pretty similar. You can get one with a Booker, with a Kyrie. A DiVincenzo is salary-wise approaching those guys. Jalen Williams. But you're definitely getting another one of the value guys. Chris Middleton, Jalen Williams is all right in terms of not crazy expensive, but a little spend on both of those. None of these others really, though. So it's mostly one-on-one. Value spend. I think that's going to carry through the small forward spot as well. We are straight up alternating value spend through each of these positions. And then we're getting a little spendy at center. That's really how it goes. Look at all these. Siakam, Royce KD, Precious Neesmith. You can go cheap, but it's still not yielding many lineups with strong. It's weird. Santi, Cat, Giannis, Neesmith. .63. Yowza. Bring you back $430 on average on FanDuel. .63. That's high for the way this summer's set up. That one spends all your money on FanDuel. Gives you a 317-point projection. That top lineup was DSJ, Jalen Brunson, Amen Thompson, Jalen Williams, Aaron Neesmith, Dylan Brooks, Pascal Siakam, Royce O'Neal, and Chet Holmgren. That might be the most balanced lineup I've ever read. Anybody have a lean on Rudy or Miles Turner? I gave you my Rudy thoughts. Turner wasn't really popping. I didn't see him much. Mamba Turner is at a 5.15% DraftKings win rate, landed in the top 152% of the time. I feel like you can get him out to that 5%ish kind of a level. Similar numbers on FanDuel. Doesn't really stand out against the field today, but has that Miles Turner ability to stand out on any given slate. Just given the nature of who he is. 34 FanDuel points in 26 minutes the other night. We've certainly got that kind of upside any given night. He's projected right around 30. So that's not even a standard deviation on top. He's got 40-point upside. A little bit beyond. If you get the really good nights, obviously we've all seen him crest 50, but I don't think we're getting that kind of an opportunity from him. But maybe you can get to him a little bit, 5%, a little bit more, 5-10%, probably fine. With that said, you guys, 617. Holy hell. I got to get these projections updated. Count for any of these changes. Take a look at how the value hits. consider what the minutes might be for Tyrese Halliburton, so on and so forth. Appreciate you guys. You guys rock. Handful of you still hanging out. We're starting and ending the show with about the same amount and probably the exact same actual people here. But I appreciate every last one of you. Hit the like button if you didn't already. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. I wish you good luck. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow. See you guys.